Super Mario World is often considered one of the best games on the Super Nintendo and even one of the best Mario games. I even considered it the best 2D Mario game before I really started to wonder if it was true as time moved along. But what made this game so special? Was it the beautiful 16-bit graphics, all 72 well-designed stages the game offered, including lots of secrets and bonuses, the perfection of 2D Mario at the time, the incredibly iconic music, or the TV show inspired off the game?
That's Mama Luigi to you, Mario!
Nope. It was all because it had dinosaurs. This leads us to Yoshi's Island, or its full legal name, Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island on the Super Nintendo. This wasn't actually the first time Nintendo enticed consumers with the Super Mario moniker being in a game's title that also has the word land in it. But actually, if you look closely at the end label here, it actually just says Yoshi's Island with no Mario World subtitle, so that means it was a scam the whole time and you fell for it, you fools! This game was created due to Yoshisaurus Munchikoopas' rising popularity after his debut in Mario World. As per usual with any dinosaur character, the most badass creature to ever exist. Wait, what do you mean no one uses his full name anymore? What? Despite the namesake, Yoshi's Island has always stood out as an incredibly distinctive game due to elements like the player controlling Yoshi, the uniquely amazing art style, and the plethora of unique platformer mechanics it offers. But at the same time, these aspects are also what makes Yoshi's Island such a fondly remembered game today. The game received near unanimous praise in 1995 as one of the best games of its kind back in the day. And nowadays, it's still often considered one of the best games on its system and even one of the greatest 2D platformers of all time. Every now and then you'll hear someone say it's better than Super Mario World, and those are really bold statements, I know. I've covered most of the 2D Mario games of this time except for this game, so it was bound to happen pretty soon. Plus, I happen to love this game as well. However, this wasn't a game I grew up with like the classic 2D Mario games, likely because of its exclusion on the Wii's Virtual Console, due to the Super FX2 chip being too hard to emulate at the time. I can't blame them since even my laptop dips in quality recording this game. So I don't have any nostalgia belonging to the game itself. However, there are lots of nostalgic aspects of this game for me, notably the music. A lot of these incredibly iconic tunes take me back to the late 2000s and early 2010s YouTube, and remind me of such hits including Brandt Floss's Baby Mario and Papa Yoshi video and the absolute classic 25 Ways to Kill Yoshi. This was kind of gruesome, but I used to watch it all the time back then. Apparently a lot of people did. The atmosphere and vibe of this game happens to be very warm and nostalgic for me, but it's not something I played until a few years ago, not actually beating it until a couple of months ago. So put your inflatable dinosaur costumes on and let's take a look and see how it really holds up as a sequel to Mario World, as well as the game in its own right, and determine whether or not it truly is that amazing. Wait for it. Perfect. Right as you boot up the game, there's an included expository cutscene never seen before in Mario up to this point, explaining the premise and how this isn't your typical Mario adventure. I love the way it's written to give off a childhood storybook vibe, and the tune accompanying this exposition feels inherently nostalgic to me somehow. It opens with a stork carrying a pair of twins, naturally, as all babies are born. Who needs to have the birds and the bees talk when Yoshi can teach you everything you need to know? Wait, Dad, you what? But suddenly, screech! One of the twins is snatched and falls down at least 10,000 feet, but the fall damage is negated by landing on Yoshi's back all the way down on Yoshi's Island, of course. This is Baby Mario, who also comes equipped with a map that Yoshi can't read, because if you play Minecraft, you know you always spawn with a map whenever you're born. However, this isn't Yoshi, this is a Yoshi, since there exists lots of Yoshis on this island. They come in lots of flavors, such as watermelon, strawberry, blue raspberry, orange, grape, chocolate, cherry, and blueberry. Here's my personal ranking. But interestingly, this cutscene refers to the plural noun of Yoshi as Yoshis with IES at the end. This is grammatically incorrect in English since it doesn't end with a Y and was fixed in later games where it's commonly just Yoshis with IS. Congratulations! You are the first person on YouTube to nitpick the spelling of the word Yoshis! You don't! Anyways, the Yoshi clan use a relay system to bring Baby Mario to the destination of his twin brother that Baby Mario can sense due to the bond between them, despite never even meeting each other technically. I just want to know for any twin viewers if this is true or not. Can you use telekinesis to locate your twin? Oh boy, I wonder who his brother could be. Oh, maybe it's Luigi, or even the forgotten third Mario brother perhaps. All the while, the baby thief Kamek sends out his goons to stop Yoshi from recovering the future world-saving plumbers, doctors, racers, painters, builders, typists, gamblers, rappers, real-life actors. The setup of this story gets the job done, and despite the minimal amount of dialogue, I do enjoy it. The childish nature of this game and the characters make for some funny writing, like being called a meanie after beating a boss. Who would have thought a baby wanting to ride the green horse would result in a boss fight like this? The choice of this game being a prequel with the addition of Baby Mario was also a very interesting choice in my opinion. The developers have said in interviews they always prioritize the gameplay first, and this was the most fitting way to have Mario along with Yoshi without having him ride him the same way he did in his predecessor. The decision to make Yoshi the star of the show also comes down to a few things such as his popularity and the appeal he would have with younger children, making the game more accessible. Takashi Tezuka explained the reasoning once in an interview and said,
"The main reason is that we wanted to make a Mario-style action game that even young children would be able to play. For that, the friendly character of Yoshi seemed perfect to us. I've also been wanting to make a pure action game that used Yoshi for a long time now."
This insight really makes me wish I got to play this game as a kid. I mean, the cartoony, ketchup-ridden 25 ways to kill Yoshi appealed to me. I can only wonder what my 5-year-old mind would do with this game. Maybe I was always just a real slapstick guy, who knows. Although one interesting thing to note about this introductory cutscene is how the sprites are actually pre-rendered as opposed to the rest of the game's art. These actually seem to be leftovers from the earlier stages of development, when they were originally going to go with pre-rendered sprites like lots of games at the time. However, they decided against it to give the game more of a unique identity. In September of 1995, Takashi Tezuka explained,
"We deliberately chose not to go for realistic graphics like Donkey Kong Country. We wanted to take a chance and do the opposite. Probably every game from here on out is going to look more like Donkey Kong Country. That being the case, we decided to go against that trend one last time and make something with a heartwarming, handmade visual style."
Even back then, graphics that prioritized realism, in massive air quotes, were all the rage. This isn't too different from today with how everyone praises games that have distinct art styles and aren't just good graphic video games and nothing else, aka almost every PlayStation exclusive now.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Every single day I wake up and get on my knees and thank God for this, because this game is undoubtedly the best looking Super Nintendo game in my opinion.
The game has flying teepees, best game ever.
One reason I'm thankful for this choice is because sometimes in games like Donkey Kong Country, it's a bit hard to distinguish the foreground and the background from each other, because it's all just pre-rendered 90s slop, you know? Another reason is of course the incredibly distinct visual identity this would not only give to this game but future Yoshi's Island games. Exploring Yoshi's Island really feels like jumping into a child's coloring book, specifically one that's good at coloring, unlike me. You can't help but love the crayon-like color palettes and the thick outlines making everything pop, as well as a method to seemingly erase that issue with Donkey Kong Country. The hand-drawn aesthetic makes the world you explore feel so thought out and deliberate. It's just so easy to admire all the work that went into this sprite art. Also, thank God they got rid of Yoshi's orange arms. Why did they even do that in the first place? It was just as strange as Link's pink hair in the acclaimed Super Nintendo game A Pink to the Past. Taking a page from Mario World, the game also sees Yoshi visiting lots of wacky locales that are cartoony, vibrant, and abstract enough to not fit the bill for your standard video game biome worlds. While World 2 may resemble cloudy mountaintops and World 3 is a monkey-dwelling jungle, they feel like mountains and jungles only on Yoshi's Island rather than just anywhere else in the world, due to the colors and abstract designs and the tropical feeling, and that's amazing. It keeps the island theme with different biome twists on it, which is really fun. Like, man, just the colors are so good! I would just kill for a scenic piss in some of these locations. Some worlds can be a bit more explicit with their aesthetics, like the Winter Wonderland of World 5, which looks amazing. However, I can't say I'm a massive fan of the tiny snow pixels covering the screen. You get used to it, but it's a bit annoying sometimes. Unfortunately, if you're a fan of vibrant colors and portable gaming without a Nintendo Switch, Steam Deck, or laptop, then you can't live a perfect life because the colors in the GBA port are pretty washed out, because they had to emphasize the picture on the original poopy GBA screen. If they had to compromise the games themselves due to not having a backlight, why didn't they just add one? The Game Gear had a backlit display in 1990 as well as Sonic Labyrinth. What do you mean they didn't win the console war? The game has lots of impressive visual effects for the time that still look really nice and fascinating to this day. The snow isn't really that fun, but there's the fog and cloud effects in some levels, the very animated lava, all of the sprite scaling, the occasional 3D object which is seamlessly put into the environment somehow, and these occasional perspective changes in the fortress levels, making it a bit more top-down or 2.5D-ish. I really like when 2D platformers play with this perspective like this while not just being explicitly 2.5D. Sometimes this is the best part of the fortress levels, but it's cool, okay? Every living organism on screen is just so expressive in this game, especially Yoshi. It's not only just the developers mastering the hardware with time, but also just lots of attention to detail. Unlike Mario in Mario World, he never stands still for a second. He's always ready to get a move on and getting that itch on his chin and looking around his surroundings. I love it. The enemy design in Yoshi's Island is just as wacky as you'd expect for a game where you play as a dinosaur who gets eaten and shit out by a frog at one point. Some designs can actually be very simple, like the iconic Blarg, which managed to get on the North American box art. Its design is so simple, I can draw that. Where's my 4.12 million copy? All these guys are very cartoony and goofy. You can't take them seriously despite being child kidnappers. The game actually introduces its fair share of iconic characters to the Mario canon, like Kamek and his wretched PlayStation buttons, Baby Bowser, who was not Bowser Jr. as people often say, but rather just Bowser as a baby, and a fair share of enemies that would appear in other spin-offs like Paper Mario, which features Raphael the Raven, the Jungle Shy Guys, and the Crazy Daisy, my favorite enemy from that game! You gotta love all these characters and everything from their name to their design. My personal favorite is Fat Guy. I think pairing visual design and audio design makes reviews flow very well, so let's address the elephant enlarged by Kamek in the room. This soundtrack is incredible. This should almost be a crime with how insanely catchy each and every song is. The main melody on the title screen is amazing and iconic, especially the rendition in Yoshi Village of Paper Mario. And this amazing status can definitely be said for the rest. That athletic theme, man. I think it has a strong case for being not only one of the most iconic songs in the Mario universe or its console of origin, but maybe even gaming as a whole if you ask me. Talking about it out loud sort of makes me realize it may be suffering a bit in variety, having only like 5 songs constantly playing throughout the game, including a few overworld themes, the athletic theme, the underground theme, and the fortress level theme. They do a good job switching between these 5 musical pieces throughout the game for the locations, and really I couldn't care less because you can't ever complain with There's also a few other little tunes here and there besides the main level themes that are real earworms, like the level clear song, Kamek's theme, the boss theme, and the map screen, which I'll admit drives me crazy with how it's like a 10-second loop at first and very simple, but with each world more instruments join in to create a triumphant sounding theme. The little tune the Shy Guys chant also gets stuck in my head a lot.
Oh shit.
Just I can point to every song in this game, whether it's a main track or a minor one, and just go on about how damn catchy it is. Even if it's limited, I couldn't care less. There's only one game in the Super Nintendo's library that I think beats out this soundtrack, but you know what they say, first is the worst, second is the best. Just everything about the graphics, art style, pixel art, aesthetic, atmosphere, backgrounds, visual design, character design, sound design is just perfection in my eyes. The presentation of this game has aged as well as Greg Heffley, who's still in middle school. How is he still in middle? I'm even surprised I managed to squeeze 2,000 words out of praising the graphics and soundtrack, but we should probably get into discussing the mechanics and gameplay now. It's no secret this dino plays nothing like it did in Super Mario World, as tons of new mechanics have been added due to controlling Yoshi rather than Mario riding Yoshi. The first tweak you might notice is the exclusion of a dedicated run button, which has been along with Mario as long as he's been Super and one of 2 bros. It is unnecessary in this game and will make pretzels out of your hands shoehorned into this current control scheme. Plus, Yoshi already controls like a dream and is perfectly tight and responsive for every situation you can ask for. He definitely carries less momentum than Mario in previous games, which isn't a good or bad thing. As opposed to being able to slide when initiating a crouch, Yoshi will stop in place due to not carrying any speed. He also has an interesting addition of a flutter jump, extending his airtime with this funny animation. It's a nifty mechanic that doesn't complicate platforming too much, it is more of a safety net that can also have skillful application on the level design here and there. For some reason, in the 5-4 fortress level, Sluggy the Unshaven's Fort, there's this one part that asks you to chain multiple frame-perfect flutter jumps, I'm guessing to demonstrate the absolute max distance you can travel with it or something, over a pit of spikes no less, and has these bats that are almost impossible to dodge. This just feels like a Lost Levels moment to me, but this is about the only instance the game taps into the evil demon from Japan banished a decade before this game's release. And also, this was technically the Mario game to introduce the ground pound, unless you want to count Bowser and Mario 3 or something stupid like that. It's used to pound down a few wood planks to get red coins or access new paths, as well as kill some enemies and break boxes. You can't cancel the animation on a dime like you can in later 2D Marios, so be careful. You don't get nearly as much use out of it as later Mario games, but it's a fun inclusion. One mechanic synonymous with dinosaurs carrying baby games is Yoshi's new egg tossing mechanic. Yoshi can eat the majority of foes in his path, and you can either spit them back out at other enemies or shoot out the enemy with one of 6 eggs Yoshi will carry. It's harder than it looks. I wish it had the fart sound like Banjo-Kazooie did, so 1 point to that game on the fart soundometer. You can even do this with the big enemies like my aforementioned favorite, Fat Guy, without getting a hemorrhoid somehow. Never underestimate the power of Yoshi's ass, that's why he likes eating it in Yoshi's stories. To aim it, a constantly moving crosshair is introduced, due to the lack of something like a right stick on the Super Nintendo controller. And this feels very natural and seamless honestly, since Yoshi can always stay moving while aiming. This also opens up new challenge ideas as well, being able to move while aiming. During my very first time with this game, I thought at first it looked a bit unintuitive not just having free aim, because I was like a stupid 13-year-old making videos about PS5 tech demos, what was I thinking? But actually using it made me realize just the opposite. It's surprisingly precise, and once again, miles better than possibly making the player stop Yoshi in his tracks to aim. You can also pause and unpause the movement of the cursor with the L and R buttons, which was a godsend for aiming once you find Yoshi's G-spot. Egg throwing may just be the most defining aspect of Yoshi's moveset in this game overall. It just has so many different uses. You can hit bad guys, break soft dirt, activate these question mark clouds, which are the equivalent of Mario's question mark blocks, collect coins or flowers from afar, ricochet off walls, shoot them through cannons, let the baseball guys bat them, play breakout. The amount of variety they get out of this mechanic is incredibly impressive. It's a perfect addition to the moveset to make this gameplay style distinct from Mario World, as well as giving it enough application to last the whole game while still coming up with new ideas by the end. However, you still need to make the eggs yourself for ammunition. The game is always considerate of this and always provides you with necessary resources for whatever challenge or puzzles up ahead involving egg throwing. There's lots of pipes that will infinitely generate enemies for you to eat and poop out of your butt, as well as blocks or turnips that will give you all the eggs you need until you're full. But the game only gives you them when necessary. If there's a collectible far off in the distance you can't reach or a cloud you want to pop, it's on you to save your eggs for when you really need them to avoid backtracking. This is very fine and dandy because it rewards careful players, but in my opinion it's a bit annoying with these particular enemies, the slime. They're used in the last two fortress levels and require almost your entire lineup of feces to kill, so the challenge becomes taking advantage of ricochets and good timing to take it down, because if you run out of eggs you gotta backtrack and go back to other rooms with respawning eggs. It just gets a bit excessive since it takes so many hits to kill, but to be fair, this is the very end of the game. These guys can't even deal damage to Yoshi, however. Oh, spoilers, I guess Yoshi fights a big egg, sorry. Then there's the bosses, where one of the challenges becomes finding the egg source to use them, but we'll discuss them later on in this Yap session. Get ready, Yoshi's Island complainers, because now we have to talk about Baby Mario and how he works, since he's an integral addition that makes this game more unique than Mario Bros. In 1985 for being an actual good console game for once. Due to Yoshi having Baby Mario on his back, this game is nothing like most platformers with health bars or power-up systems like Mario. Yoshi himself can take as many hits as he wants, barring a spike up the ass, a bottomless pit, or hot molten lava. Baby Mario works on a timer. You start off with 10 seconds and the max you can achieve is 30. Losing Baby Mario causes you to lose a life, as well as your tolerance, but I guarantee you 95% of deaths will be bottomless pits and other hazards rather than actually losing Baby Mario, because this game is frankly pretty generous with the timer. Every checkpoint adds 10 seconds, there are flowers to convert enemies to star bits which give you time, and popping clouds will give you star bits a lot of the time. And when you're actually carrying Baby Mario with a timer below 10, it'll start counting up for you just to be nice. Catching Baby Mario out of the bubble is really as simple as a well-timed lick most of the time, and trust me, you want to catch him fast because, as everyone knows, Baby Mario balls his eyes out any second he isn't on Yoshi's back, and this has drove gamers up the wall ever since 1995. Here's an uncompressed version of the audio in case anyone was wondering. Baby Mario gets so much flack from players because lots of people don't realize how challenge is what makes the wheels inside video games go round. To everyone who thinks Baby Mario is an annoying mechanic, even though you aren't wrong technically, all I have to say to you is simply don't get hit. It can definitely be hard, since sometimes they throw everything and the kitchen sink at Yoshi, which makes playing carefully really hard, but it very rarely feels unfair. One personal critique I do have is how you have iframes after Yoshi takes a hit, of course, but none once you retrieve Baby Mario. You really gotta risk it for the biscuit to get him swiftly, so sometimes the lack of iframes results in taking another hit once you retrieve the baby, which is a bit annoying in my opinion, and I think having iframes to feel more natural, since the point of them is to avoid getting comboed after all. But no one can deny having a loud ass baby crying is a great and unique incentive to play the game well. Like, it's genius. Everyone hates the sound of babies crying. That's why I hate most of the Sonic fanbase. I also like how it's frankly a more generous system than most Mario games, meaning you'll probably die less playing through this game. Although that doesn't mean it can't be hard sometimes. While yes, I do actually hate listening to the baby cry, it's a genius and distinctive motivation for the player as well as a well thought out system in its own right. Yoshi even has a few power-ups of sorts in the form of different colored watermelons that give you temporary abilities, as all watermelons do naturally. The normal ones let you rapid fire seeds at enemies, the red one gives you freaking fire breath, and the blue one lets you freeze enemies with ice breath. You only get around 3 shots with these, but they're pretty fun, albeit not very common. While they're not very abundant in levels, you can fortunately score them from some of the bonus games, along with other items like extra star bits and eggs. My luck is really bad with these for some reason.
God damn it. How is this even possible?
They can be used to grab 1 or 2 collectibles here and there, but they're just nifty bonuses to play with otherwise. Now, as you've heard, there is an ass load of new mechanics and moves to take in, especially if you're more accustomed to more traditional platformers. But the game teaches you everything very well. In my opinion, the best way to tutorialize the core mechanics is to 1, have empty spaces letting players find out what every button does, cause I don't know about you guys, but every time I take control of a new character, I gotta press all these thingies and see what they do. And 2, have level design with obstacles that makes players use instinct to learn the moves. Why do you think the Goomba charges towards you in the first Sonic level? Yoshi's Island does this for the most part, since there are also optional tutorial boxes teaching the dinosaurs many facets, but they can be completely ignored. These have actually come in handy on my first playthrough and taught me things like locking the reticle in place and how to ricochet with the A button. It's great how they lend a helping hand to new players, but don't force me to be interrupted by text boxes each and every time I come back to this goddamn game! Who am I kidding? I don't come back to this game. I genuinely cannot think of another 2D platformer or possibly even any platform game with so many unique mechanics. I challenge any viewers to find other platformers that have feces tossing based challenges with a health system centered around auditory torture. Yoshi is such a joy to play, and it makes me wonder why someone with such a robust moveset in a 2D space would jump off the castle in Mario 64. But now we gotta look at that good old level design, since that can totally make or break a game. The level design is sort of all over the place in this game, however I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way. I just mean Yoshi will be doing lots of different things in all 48 stages this game offers. There's so many different enemies and obstacles to see all throughout Yoshi's Island in Yoshi's Island. You got lots of stage gimmicks, there's the chain chomps falling from the sky, boulders to push around, lots of moving platforms. I can go on and on really. There's the iconic fuzzies introduced in the level, touch fuzzy, get dizzy, which have encouraged me to never touch drugs or hallucinogens for my whole life because they make Yoshi really hard to control, which is totally the point. Oh yeah, a lot of the levels have titles now and they're pretty cool.
Keep moving? Yeah, right.
With the inclusion of the fuzzies, there's no way the Mario series will beat the drug reference allegations anytime soon. The game even has a few gimmicks in the form of transformations for Yoshi, where you can transform into a helicopter, mole tank, submarine, a train, and a car with extendable legs. It's crazy how a game already about a dinosaur who tosses feces at cartoony characters can get even weirder, isn't it? These transformations are alright, but the main issue is that most of the ones with freeform movement like the helicopter or submarine control like tanks, just as much as Zelda does in the first Zelda game, hardly capable of more than 4-directional movement. It gets a bit hard to dodge obstacles with this sometimes, and they aren't my favorite stage gimmicks to be honest. The mole tank is a bit clumsy as well, albeit underutilized, and the exact same goes for the other ones. They're fully functional, but nothing more special than something that spices up the gameplay, which is good of course. There's also one level in World 5 where you start skiing with Yoshi, which is more of a one-time stage gimmick than a transformation, since Yoshi doesn't really transform into a skier or whatever they're called. This one is fun, but running into anything pretty much means you're doomed. The last of these wacky transforming gimmicks is actually Baby Mario himself as Super Baby Mario when you collect stars. He can run up walls and is invulnerable to most hazards. The main interesting use it has is giving you challenging obstacles to dodge whilst on the time limit and having to grab more stars to keep going. This one with the spikes felt like some Mario Maker level design, but it's fun. Interestingly, in an interview, Miyamoto explained the reason this was added was to have some action technically involving Mario himself. In 1995, he stated,
That's why we added the ability to transform into Super Baby Mario when you pick up a star. In fact, our first idea was that the baby would transform into a fully grown, mustachioed Mario when you get the star. But another staff member pointed out how that would be weird with the story, so we kept him as Super Baby Mario.
I'd say this is probably the best one since it doesn't feel jank like the others. These transformations vary in quality, but the thing is, they feel sort of sporadically used. Heck, it feels like by the end of the game they're almost forgotten about. Apart from Super Baby Mario once or twice in World 6, that world has one helicopter segment at the very beginning of 6-8, and I'm pretty sure that's it. And they're occasionally just used in really weird times, I feel. Like in 3-3, there's this one part where you have to transform into a helicopter for about 10 seconds to fly to a door. And I mean, that's fine I guess, but this door brings you to a segment focused on the submarine, which also happens to be a bit frustrating. Very weird to introduce the helicopter again just to start focusing on an entirely different one. At least this one doesn't sink. This is sort of the thing with some levels in Yoshi's Island. The design can be quite spontaneous. For example, in 4-4, this is the fortress level. And the very beginning sees you being chased by a chain chomp, which totally could have been expanded into its own level. But right after this, it brings us to the fortress, which is centered around exploring all 4 paths to receive each key to the boss. This could be because the levels usually see you actually making your way inside the fortress, but it's definitely a bit of a weird thing to take note of with this constantly changing focus. However, I don't see this as a bad thing. I think you can say there are 2 main types of platformer level design. The modern one mostly seen today involves individual levels focusing on one specific gimmick introduced in a safe environment that ramps up the challenge the more and more you progress, which you could definitely say is the best way to go about it, but it kind of makes them boring to review just saying that over and over again. Mario Wonder does this, and that's the best 2D Mario game of all time, so it's definitely not bad, mind you. But I sort of have a soft spot for those platformers that are typical obstacle courses, just throwing whatever they want at you. The first ones that come to mind are the early Mario games and Crash Bandicoot. Yoshi's Island does have central gimmicks sometimes. World 3 is kind of monkey focused, and World 5 has snow gimmicks like snowballs, ski lifts, and the aforementioned skiing segment. It's definitely notable how Yoshi's Island can feel a bit unfocused at times, but I love the variety it offers if I'm being honest. Another reason why levels have lots of different focuses is because they can get pretty long, and you'll start to notice this as early as the second world. I'll be honest, I do think some levels sort of go on a bit too long for my taste. There's all kinds of levels in this game with fortunately no water levels, but there's quite a few stages that are a bit puzzle and almost maze-centric, which I'm not a big fan of. A lot of the really long ones are the fortress levels, and even a few auto-scrollers. The fortress levels tend to have a bit of some puzzly level design with lots of one-way paths and such, involving breaking vases to collect keys to get to the boss. Don't try the vase thing in real life, guys. I'm so sorry, Grandma. Some levels just happen to be really slow-paced or long, which I'm not a big fan of. Like I mentioned earlier, 4-4 has 4 different paths to explore, which each one focusing on a different gimmick, which is nice, but it's a bit tiring to complete. 5-4 also has a long route on this platform that feels like one of those safari rides or something at Disney's Animal Kingdom or something, with a constant starting and stopping to see whatever obstacle there is. They really didn't need to do this. The slowest level might possibly be 6-5, which is ironically titled The Very Long Cave. They even knew it was as slow as molasses. I don't know why they still kept it in. It has the slowest camera scrolling of all time with instant kill lava everywhere, so be careful. And I can't not mention the extremely long and odd ride through this lava in 6-4, which is more than a minute of absolutely nothing.
You know, this has kind of taken a while. At the very least, the lava looks very well animated. You know, a lot of Super Nintendo games have aged pretty well in terms of graphics, but I still think this game looks the best. Like, I don't know, this lava just looks really good. You know, that kind of is taking a while. At least it's something nice to look at. And the background too, it's very pretty. It looks so hand-drawn, like, this is so good. How did they do it on a Super Nintendo? Okay, why is this taking so long? What is the point? This game is like twice as long as Mario World already. What's taking so long? Oh, finally, there's an enemy. Okay, that means we're close to the end, right? Right? Uh-oh. Okay, I'm gonna punch a fucking tower, but I can't do it.
World 6 does have some of my favorite levels with genuinely some of the most fun in the whole game, but it also has some of my least favorites too. In the very same level with that lava rise 6-4, there's this big pipe maze which does the perspective thing I like, but it's so confusing. There's so many different rooms that just have nothing, and you gotta find the specific enemy with the key, which is that slime guy I don't like. Then if you can't kill him fast enough, you gotta go back and get eggs, then try to kill him again. A few other confusing levels include 3-6, which is this cave level that requires a key at the very end, when the whole time you get it by going to the opening segment outside the cave and taking the upper path. I feel like the key being inside the main portion of the level itself would make a lot more sense. That's what I personally expected playing this level, but alright. 6-6 is another one of those mazes about fetching a key. It makes you go on this super long and winding path just to show you the key is actually at the very beginning of the segment just above the camera. All it takes is one egg to break down. That's just amazing. Now, I've realized I just did a whole lot of bitching about the most flawed levels in this game, and truth be told, those are about the worst the game gets in my opinion. But let's talk about all the levels that are genuinely really fun, which is the good majority of them. Aside from the fortress and maze-like levels I already mentioned, there are lots of other types of levels too. The typical overworld type levels are really fun because they don't get too punishing, and the enemy design in this game is so incredibly fun and varied. Like I said, even when they don't have specific gimmicks to each level, they're always a blast to play, due to the fun challenges and how they use Yoshi's mechanics. My favorite levels in Mario 3 and Mario World have always been the really athletic ones. You know, the ones in Mario World that go like dun 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 dun. And feature lots of gimmicky platforms suspended over bottomless pits. Yoshi's Island has a great variety of these levels, and it really nails the athletic style since Yoshi himself is very capable. 4-3, Don't Look Back, is super fun and has lots of these time platforms that dissolve after the number of seconds they display. 4-7 has lots of fast moving platforms, and they aptly title the level Ride Like the Wind. World 5 has lots of really fun athletic snow levels involving these ski lifts and other platforms. It even has a fortress level that barely feels like one because it's lacking the typical theming and puzzly level design. And you know, while I totally loathe auto-scrollers like 6-5 because there's really not a whole lot going on, pretty much all the other auto-scrollers are pretty fun, like 1-5 with what the game dubs donut lifts, and 5-6 taking place in the clouds with lots of Lakitus and other baddies to dodge. Very reminiscent of Mario 3's airship levels. I also really enjoy the penultimate level, Keep Moving! Since it's one of the hardest levels in the whole game. These levels can honestly get challenging, and I seriously love the difficulty because while it's totally no Celeste or Super Meat Boy, it really wants to test your skill since there are lots of moves Yoshi can take advantage of. And abilities like the Flutter Jump offer a nice safety net for platforming to give even the most inexperienced players a chance. I honestly think Yoshi's Island nails the gameplay philosophy behind a 2D platformer. It does its best to please all crowds of players, giving things like items you can win to make it more accessible, while also having level designs later on that give experienced players the challenge they want. It feels like there's a lot of ways you can play Yoshi's Island, and that's because there is. Now it's time to get into the collectibles and scoring system. At the end of every level, you're given a score from 0 to 100. Hope you don't play games as an escape from schoolwork because you won't be able to escape those numbers in this game.
Hey, whoever used to own my physical copy of Yoshi's Island, I just want to say, you freaking suck. How do you get a 22?
To achieve the perfect 100, you must collect all 5 flowers, all 20 red coins, and keep Baby Mario's timer maxed out at 30. Starting with the flowers, these are your standard 2D platformer collectibles you can nab as bonuses, comparable to the Kong letters in Donkey Kong Country, for example. Technically, this sort of thing got its start in Mario World with the dragon coins, but collecting all of them just gives you an extra life and that's it. They're so forgettable, not only did I forget to mention them in my old review, but no one called me out for it either. But at least people got the Brave Little Toaster reference, thank God. I think a lot of the time going for the flowers is pretty fun since they can be a challenge and they make you feel cool for collecting them. Except every now and then the game totally pulls a Sonic Frontiers and just hands them to you very sporadically. But due to these collectibles, the levels feel really wide open and full of nooks and crannies to explore for secrets, and that makes them a ton of fun. The only real critique I have is how sometimes it feels like you can go so out of your way finding a key and everything, and the door leads you to a stupid bonus game instead of the flowers, which, you know, add up to 50% of your total level score, so I'm more on the lookout for those than these stupid balloon popping minigames. But they're really fun additions to the game, except for the times they try to kill you. At the end of the day, I'm a simple guy. I see a shiny flower and I want to grab it, so I like these. The second factor to the score, and a bit of a sub-collectible perhaps, are the 20 red coins. You see, these are really weird. They're usually hidden among normal patches of coins, except they have a slight red tint to them, which is fairly noticeable. But sometimes coins will have the reddish tint and not be a red coin for some reason, and also sometimes enemies will carry red coins that are just straight up red coins. And in playing the GBA version, I notice a lot of the time you can't even distinguish them from normal coins, but sometimes they do also have that red tint, and that inconsistency across both versions kills me. The challenge with these is more so just spotting them rather than actually trying to get them, I feel. They can be well hidden sometimes, but I don't find them as fun to collect as the flowers. The last contributor to the score is that godforsaken baby's timer. You need to keep it fully maxed out if you want to achieve a perfect score. This doesn't mean you can't get hit at all because of the star bits you can gain from checkpoints, clouds, and flowers, but you gotta be pretty darn careful. And like I said earlier, these guys can really want Yoshi and that baby dead sometimes. And there's enemies like the bandits, which can only be killed with a ground pound that charge towards Yoshi and snatch Mario right under your nose. One thing I totally love doing is using any items I have to give me more star bits right at the very end of the level, which has actually boosted me to a perfect score on a few occasions actually. This task is definitely not impossible, but playing this carefully has proven to be a bit too tedious for my taste, so it's something I don't really bother with. I've gotten a few perfect scores, but I've never tried to get 100s on every single level. The main reason why is Baby Mario's timer. It's too much for me to deal with, and like I said earlier, some of these levels can get really damn long and confusing, so I'd be damned if I had to keep replaying these. I'd rather replay them to try and get the lowest score possible, which is actually doable if you avoid the flowers and avoid the red coins, and keep an enemy in your mouth to hit Yoshi right at the very end to retrieve Baby Mario when the timer reaches 0. Although I am very curious to try both one day and see which is harder, the maximum or minimum score route. Just like trying to get perfect grades in school, I feel like this is a bit more trouble than it's worth, to be honest. But you actually get a bit of a worthwhile reward in each world you get perfect scores in. You get a whole new secret level to play. These are the hardest levels in the whole game. You can really tell the devs had fun designing them. Oh, how am I playing them? You know, it's very rude to ask a man what his salary is. The GBA version has even more secret levels, and these can just get straight up fucking mean. And to cover this version really quick, the Super Mario World subtitle is gone from the title screen, the soundtrack is compressed and not as pleasant, the colors aren't as vibrant, and Yoshi never shuts up. He sounds like Gup. I think it's really nice when games offer tough as nails secret levels to reward players who go for 100% to test their apparent skill in the game. Just get ready to really be tested sometimes. These are a pretty swag reward, especially for those who don't find the game hard enough. But going for perfect scores in every single level isn't something I've ever considered to be worthwhile. Maybe one day. You cannot deny the replayability all of these systems bring to the game. Miyamoto specifically wanted to make the game a big replayable adventure for Mario's last big Super Nintendo game. He claims,
We chose this gameplay system because we wanted to make a game where you could play the same course again and again. Beginners should be able to go for a simple clear, while more advanced players can go back and try to get 100%.
Also, Yoshi's Island is a rather big 2D platformer. This replay took me 8 hours, which is a pretty meaty length for a 2D platformer of this time, about 2 or even 3 times the length of your average Mario 3 or Mario World playthrough. Excluding those levels that are too slow and long, the game really doesn't overstay its welcome, and I find no harm in giving the game lots of content to have people coming back. I beat this game for the first time not too long ago, and I hardly minded replaying it because it's still super fun. I'd imagine this was especially great for kids who couldn't afford the brand new N64 considering how this launched towards the end of the generation, because with this game there's levels to perfect and new things to unlock like stars on the title screen. Oh boy! Who needs these crappy graphics when you can play as Yoshi? His nose is way too big. Worst game of all time. There's still one thing we haven't talked about yet, however, and that's the boss fights. These are something most players remember very fondly for good reason. Typically, they involve taking a pretty standard enemy and making him big, and you have to combat them like that. Despite them sharing this basic premise, a lot of them still manage to be really memorable. They don't start off that interesting or challenging, however. Wait, the ESRB didn't say this game had partial nudity, what? But around World 3 or so, they get quite interesting with how they use the game's mechanics. The Naval Piranha boss, for example, is a good skill check to make sure players know how to ricochet their eggs well. And with Hook Bill the Koopa, you have to mess up his balance by firing eggs at him to pound him in the stomach. Okay, maybe I could have worded that better. Lots of bosses actually have interesting approaches to this premise. Like, you know, there's that one boss where Yoshi casually gets shrunken down and eaten by a frog and gets shat out after throwing enough eggs at its uvula. Man, there's something with games of this time and having players explore the insides of creatures. I don't get it. This is still the best Mario RPG though. And of course, there's a quirky little boss against Raphael the Raven, which sees you on the moon itself having to shove wooden stumps into his ass. This is a personal skill issue, I'll admit, but this one sort of disorients me a lot while playing. But I will say it's a very interesting approach. Aside from the first few, which are a bit too uninteresting, Yoshi's Island honestly excels at making really memorable encounters. But of course, what's a Yoshi's Island review without talking about that finale? First, we have a bit of a mini-boss with Kamek, although it's hard to call it that since you don't directly attack him. All you do is just avoid his wretched PlayStation buttons. Oh golly, I hope they don't figure out what controller I recorded footage with. Then we come face to face with Baby Bowser, who wants to ride Yoshi by trying to crush him to death. He also kills Kamek. I actually find this short encounter to be rather interesting because so many video game bosses have this one trope where they attack by creating shockwaves in the ground. But now you get to do that yourself to damage the boss. But then, after this, Bowser transforms and we have one of the hardest, toughest, coolest, sickest, awesomest moments in a Super Nintendo game. That riff is so freaking ominous and suspenseful, and then it presses as hard as it can on the gas pedal and really gets the blood pumping. These guys are really good at making some rockin' guitars out of the Super Nintendo's beeps and boops. And actually fighting the boss is just as good too. It makes you use massive eggs to throw out Baby Bowser in the background from an entirely new perspective, and he destroys the ground around you and even charges towards you once or twice. This final boss is amazing. I love it when final bosses switch things up for a new kind of challenge. Good challenges, I mean. I do love Sonic final bosses, which almost always feature entirely different gameplay, but in Yoshi's Island, no, it takes the mechanics and flips them on their head with a new take on it. It gets pretty nerve-wracking when the ground gets more and more destroyed and he charges towards you and jump scares you. This is such a good boss fight. I can only imagine the feeling kid me would have had if I beat this game growing up, getting to this moment after going through so many tough levels. Back then, I thought a boss like this was climactic. I would literally poop and shit my pants if I got to this. I can totally understand why so many people consider this one of the most memorable Nintendo bosses. Heck, I might even have to agree. With this towering turtle defeated, we can now rescue the secret Mario brother, who looks nothing like the one I remember. Oh, the Mandela effect is crazy, am I right? And with that, the Mario brothers are brought to their new parents, presumably, and the game ends. At this point, what else can I say about this game? This is not the greatest game of all time or even the best Mario game, but I think it's amazing. This game honestly feels like an evolution of Super Mario World despite their efforts to make it its own thing. It takes Mario's traditional platforming and puts the player in control of Yoshi, which brings so many new interesting mechanical and aesthetical changes for the better. This is easily one of the most unique 2D platformers I've ever played. Possibly even one of the best, too. I thought this game was really awesome, and that made me question, is it better than Mario World? Replaying this game to answer this question really reminded me that Mario World is an absolutely joyous game to play, let's not forget that. Jumping into the game, everything is just so fun and it never gets too hard, but I personally think the main stages challenge the player just right. But, I don't know, I think I've been starting to prefer Yoshi's Island. It's really not perfect, but there's a magic to this game. It's so well crafted and charming, and most of all, incredibly fun. While this game does have higher highs than Mario World, I do also think this game kind of has lower lows. There's no water levels at least, but some stages can be a drag. A few too many, I think. But in the end, I still come out honestly loving and appreciating this game even more than its predecessor in name only. This is a game not only Mario enthusiasts, but platformer enthusiasts should try out. It's a classic and genuinely deserving of being one of the best games of its kind. So, in conclusion, Yoshi's Island is a pretty cool island. I would totally go on vacation here as long as I don't have to go through the very long cave again. I'd rather get killed 25 times.